Welcome back to a fantasy football podcast. We have a special episode today. Both Chris and I are in the studio together.
We're in person.
This is the first one. Luckily, we have our fantasy football draft this weekend, like most of you do. So we have an opportunity to have both of us in the same place, under the same roof, for our draft that's going to be going on tomorrow.
This was championship game last year, guys. This was championship game. He didn't win.
Yeah, okay. Understood. That being said, today's episode, we're going to talk about some winners of the preseason. So for those who have not had a chance to draft yet, here's some late round sleepers possibly, and some people to keep an eye on or handcuff the starter with, because these guys have talent. And if anything were to happen to starter, or even halfway through the season, you could see an emergence of one of these players that could possibly be a league winner for you in your fantasy leagues. Before we jump into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button as always so you can get all the drops that we have. Again, during the season, we're going to have 3 episodes coming out per week, and we'll go into those details for Monday, Thursday, and Saturday episodes. Saturday episodes. So keep tuned in for those, for all your waiver wire and starts and sit transactions that you are looking for advice for.
And we appreciate all the support so far. Let's keep it rolling. We love you guys. Thank you for all the support so far. Let's grow this thing into something we didn't think was possible.
Yeah, we'd like to be a true piece in your fantasy football advice and research on a week-to-week basis.
We're men of the people. And keep the comments coming. We love to hear it. We love to talk to you guys about it. So,
that being said, let's roll right in. So our first big winner is going to be Kenny Pickett. It's no surprise. This guy played in, I think, 3 games, but he played for 5 drives total. All 5 drives, he was able to be efficient with the football. And on top of that, that offense just looked like they were running on all cylinders right as they did at the end of the season. He was 13 for 15, just 1 yard under 200 with 2 touchdowns. But the big stat is all 5 drives, that offense scored a touchdown.
Yeah. Now, this is something we kind of talked about in the preseason. I know early on when we talked about teams we wanted to avoid, this was one of them, because there was uncertainty on what Kenny Pickett was going to be able to do. I still think that there's question marks for a lot of guys on this team because they're going to distribute the ball around a lot. We saw guys like Deontay Johnson become more involved, Pat Freiermuth become more involved. We saw Kenny Pickett make some big plays down the field. And we saw Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren both be effective in the run game and the pass game. So I think that I am starting to turn around on Kenny Pickett. I'm still kind of questionable about a lot of the other players just because I do think the way this offense is set up is to get everyone involved. It's not going to be hyper-targeting one guy. But I do like Kenny Pickett because of his explosive ability. George Pickens because of his explosive ability. But Kenny Pickett looked really good in preseason.
Oh, yeah.
Much better than I thought he was going to finish last year. Like the last couple of games he played, he was really efficient in. But we didn't really see the fantasy production really elevate to a starting caliber guy. I think that he has the weapons around him to potentially get there this season. And this is a guy that, like, especially if I'm drafting like later on and I fade quarterback, this is a guy I would pick up later in the draft just to keep on my team, because if he did turn out, like, there's so many weapons around there.
Yeah.
That, like, he could throw up huge numbers.
Well, if you look at Geno Smith last year, the weapons he had around him,
exactly.
This is a situation that's like that again. And I agree with the sentiment about that. We did kind of stay away from this team when we were talking about it.
Right.
For not the sole purpose, as Chris said, that we didn't like the players. And if you go back and watch our video of offenses to avoid, we had the Steelers and Saints for the same reason. There's a lot of mouths to feed here, and they spread the ball around and are efficient with it. You've got Najee, who's an inefficient runner, but still gets the volume. You've got Jaylen Warren, who's an explosive runner that's going to eat into carries and touchdowns for Najee. Right. So there's your running back room. You've got 3 solid receivers in George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, and Allen Robinson, and even some of the young bucks that they have back there are going to be able to produce at this offense. And then you've got 2 tight ends, too, as well, Freiermuth and the rookie Washington coming out of Georgia, who's a big blocker for them, but he's going to stay on the field.
He just likes to rep it. If you don't know that John is a Georgia fan, any person from Georgia is probably the best player.
Just go watch film on Washington. You tell me he's not a freak.
Yeah, he's a freak.
So we like Pickett in this offense the most because he's got the most to actually gain from all of those pieces in this offense. It's tougher for us to be wanting to go get Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Freiermuth at their values because they're going to have these big games and they're going to have dud games. They're going to have big games, dud games, because it's going to be a different person each game, really feasting on the volume and feasting on the touchdown capital for these teams.
Yeah, I think you actually brought up a really good point. Is that and I was gonna say, comparing him to Geno Smith, and he's a great guy to if you go fade quarterback and draft Geno Smith, Kenny Pickett is a great guy to have as your bench.
Might as well.
And I do, one of the things that scared me about Pickett and this offense in general is I questioned how many points they were going to be able to score per game. And in the preseason they looked good. In the last couple of games of last season, they looked efficient. And this is where I'm kind of turning on this team is this offense could be good. This offense could be potent enough to put up 4 different touchdowns per game, and the defense on the other side is elite.
Yeah.
So if they can be in games more, if they can be scoring 21 to 28 points a game, I like the players in this offense a lot more, but it's going to be around what Kenny Pickett develops into year 2 for.
Yeah, and I agree. And I just think he's got the coaching staff. He's got a great head coach that is a winning head coach that I think this team is poised to do well. I just heed our warning with the fact that you literally are unsure of who's going to get the volume there.
Right.
So that being said, we'll move on to our next one. And our next one is a quarterback as well. And it's somebody who I was very iffy on because a lot of the talk out there in the preseason was who's going to be the quarterback in Washington. Well, Sam Howell won the job. He was 28 for 30. Yeah, he was 28 for 37 for 265 and 3 touchdowns in 2 games that he played. He did start both those games. He looked very good. He looked accurate. Now again, this is preseason. He did not get a chance to face the NFC juggernaut defenses that he's going to be able to face, and he didn't get to face a true AFC East juggernauts that he's going to face. So this is take it with a grain of salt. And I still am sitting back and saying to myself, I don't see him being able to have 2,000-yard receivers in both Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. And now with Terry McLaurin possibly out for a couple games, and who knows if that injury decides to prolong itself, it just scares me that he's going to be leaning on alternate pieces to get it done. And if you look back at his college career, he had a great junior year season with good receivers. He loses those receivers. He was still a good quarterback in college, but he had to rely on his legs. And again, you've got a very good defensive set with the Giants, Cowboys, Eagles in terms of pass rushing. And then don't even want to get me started with the AFC East. It may be a tough road for Sam Howell this year. I do think he's a good quarterback. I just don't know if this is the year we see a boom for him. But again, like Pickett, I'd like to grab somebody like Sam Howell and stash him as a second quarterback because he has the potential to rise up the ranks and finish with inside the top 15 because this team is going to be playing from behind and behind often. They do have a good defense, which will keep the offense on the field. But when you're facing some of these high-flying offenses of Miami and Buffalo and the Jets and the Cowboys and Eagles, you're going to have to keep up some way, and the running game is the one that's going to have to take a back seat to Howell and his arm.
Well, I think that we both had the kind of hesitation with this offense. I still wouldn't draft Sam Howell as a fantasy quarterback, but the way he played in preseason, the way this offense looked, it makes me a lot more confident in drafting the other positional players on this team.
That's a very good point.
And so I really like Jahan Dotson. I still think Terry McLaurin is a really good value. I don't care that he's injured for a couple of games. He might drop around because of that, but that's fine. I really like where he's being drafted and how he's used. And then there's guys that you can get later in the draft, especially De'Ami Brown, who has a really good connection with Sam Howell. I think he's a guy that could overtake Curtis Samuel as kind of that number 3 role. We listen to you guys. We do. All right. So I really do think that that connection there is really special. But I agree with you. I think that they're going to try to run the ball because their defense is good enough to keep them in games, and they're going to want to keep the scores down. So the way teams do that is slow the game down. I think Bieniemy and the way he runs his offense is trying to get explosive players the ball in their hands and let them do explosive things with it. So Gibson and Jahan Dotson, I think, are my 2 favorite value picks from this team. But the way Sam Howell played this year or this year in preseason makes me a lot more comfortable going and drafting those guys at their ADP and not trying to let them slip to me.
Correct. Yeah, and I agree with that too. And when I talk about drafting Sam Howell here, I'm talking about late round backup quarterback,
Right.
Type of situation. You're stashing him in the hopes, and he's an easy drop for you as well because he's such a late pick. But the thing is, if you go for somebody like Justin Fields, you go for a Tua, and then all of a sudden you have Goff, you have Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, all these ones that are going a little bit later, sucked up by other people, and you've got to lean on somebody like Pickett or Howell. You can have a little bit of confidence that if anything happened to Justin Fields or Tua or something like that, you've got a backup that probably has a little bit higher floor than most people coming to. These are two sophomore quarterbacks who have been in the league. I like Pickett over Howell, but both of these won the preseason. That's why they're on our list.
Yeah.
Moving into the same division here in the NFC East, the Cowboys have a great offense of the past couple seasons. It's under a new offensive coordinator this year. You have a new RB1 in Tony Pollard, and both Chris and I have sat here and talked many times, and why we don't have Pollard so high up in our rankings is because we don't think he's there for the volume play. He's not the type that's going to get the Ezekiel Elliott volume, the Saquon Barkley volume. We think he is going to get good snap percentage. I mean, we're talking 60% to 70% snap percentage, but you're talking about Saquon and the top running backs there having 80+% snap percentage. I don't see that being the case. He was not drafted to be a starting running back. He was always a complementary piece on that offense. He may be the main complementary here. So part of our winners here are both Deuce Vaughn and Rico Dowdle, who are both backup running backs vying for that number 2 spot. And Deuce Vaughn was 13 rushes for 64 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a 4.9 yards per carry. Stud in training camp and stud in the preseason. Rico Dowdle had a great preseason too. He had 14 carries for 59 yards, no touchdowns, but still at a 4.2 yards per carry. And he was involved more than Vaughn was in the passing game, and he had 5 catches for 42 and a receiving touchdown.
I think Vaughn was 4 for 4 on receptions. She just, I think, only had like 6 or 7 yards on it. But it's good to see both these running backs involved in the passing game.
Correct.
To be able to be 3-down backs or early down backs. That way they're not tipping their hand as in like Pollard's. Every time Pollard's in there, he's getting receiving yard. I still think Pollard is the guy to own here.
100.
But Pollard's never had, and this is our biggest gripe with him, is that Pollard's never had over a 50% touch share in this backfield, right? So there was always Zeke and him splitting, or Zeke had 60 and Pollard had 40. Well, let's just say he ups it and he gets 60%. So 40% is going to go to these two guys, and these two guys could end up being big money guys, especially if they use them down the goal line.
Yeah, I think that's the low end. The high end is probably 70% for Pollard because they're going to run the game through Pollard. But still, right. 30% of your running back touches and snaps going to somebody else.
And they both look good.
Yeah.
Like, they both look good in the preseason. Like, I think Deuce Vaughn is a surprise to a lot of people. I think people make fun of him because he's 5'5", but he gets lost behind that
Darren
giant
Sproles.
Yeah, but he's a better in between the tackle runner than Darren Sproles.
Absolutely.
And I think that he gets the offensive line for the Cowboys is massive.
Yeah.
So he gets completely lost into there, and he is shifty enough to find those small little holes and break big plays from that, which is something I really like from him. And we saw a couple 20-yard plays from him that he just broke it off. So it's these are guys you should be targeting. You're not going to draft them high, but you should be targeting late in the draft or early waiver wire selections, that if anything did happen to Pollard, one of these guys is going to step into a really good situation because Dallas is an offense that's very potent.
And built around the run, too.
Right.
And I think really at the end of the day, when you compare him to Darren Sproles, you also got to compare him to Eckler in the fact for Vaughn that it is a guy that gets lost behind the line. I mean, that's why Eckler is so great, is it's tough for these defensive linemen to see him and which hole he's going to and pick a side to try and block. So you get a Deuce Vaughn to come in there, you get Dowdle to go in there. I agree with Chris. You don't necessarily have to draft him. It could be a waiver wire pickup. But if you're looking to pick a backup somewhere, would you rather have a backup in Minnesota that's really unproven and you're unsure, or a backup in a rushing offense in the Cowboys that they are built around the run and always have, and these guys are going to get great opportunities because of that? I'm leaning towards picking up a backup for the Cowboys, taking a shot on it, and worst case, you drop them. You drop them for somebody because you got an injury to a receiver and you need a receiver. That's fine.
Yeah, I haven't seen either one of these go either one of these guys go above the 14th round.
Correct. Yeah.
So like if you're going to get them, you're going to get them super super late or for free, and especially in deeper leagues. If you're in a 14-man league, these are guys you can go and snag with a later draft pick and stash on your bench. If anything did happen, and let's say one of these two does end up winning that job outright, then you're having a 40% snap share or a 40% carry share in a backfield that is potent and well balanced.
Yeah.
So let's say Deuce Vaughn. I mean, let's say it's Rico Dowdle, right? If he wins that the second job, and he's taking the bulk of the early down work, or the bulk of the work that's not Tony Pollard, then that's still going to be significant workload, and that can lead to significant fantasy production.
Well, here's a perfect example. You've got everybody jumping up and drafting a guy like Kendra Miller a little bit higher than these guys who are barely going.
Right.
But Kendra Miller is going to be in a backfield that's going to have Jamal Williams, and then they're going to have Kamara, which don't forget about that guy because that guy's still the RB1 in that squad. And then you got Kendra Miller coming in, who's still going to have a role, but his snap percentage is not going to be anywhere close to one of these guys that we're predicting. Like I said, 30 to 40% snap share is going to be much higher than probably a 18 to 20% snap share for Kendra Miller on a good day. So
right.
We'll stick with the running backs in the winning category here, and that's Tank Bigsby. I think a lot of you can agree that this guy was hyped up hard, especially by his coaching staff, and then we got to see him on the field, and we know why. He had 28 rushes for 159 yards. He had 83 yards after contact in those 159, and he had a 5.7 yards per carry. You could see the efficiency here. He's better between the tackle runner than his counterpart, who's why am I drawing a blank? Travis Etienne. And then obviously Etienne struggled in the red zone and inside the 5-yard line, inside the 10-yard line. This is a guy that immediately can impact that team in the red zone and up their red zone efficiency. I love grabbing him. He's going late in a lot of drafts. I think people are going to start seeing that name, and it'll be popping up because ADP is pretty low. But at this point, I think if you take out the beginning of the drafts in the preseason, and if you were just drafting this week, his ADP would be much higher. So don't sit and wait and hoping that he falls to you in the 12th, 13th round, because that may not be the case anymore in drafts. I like this guy. I'm handcuffing ETN if I have ETN, but I'm also going for this guy to try and steal him from the handcuff opportunity.
Well, I actually think he has standalone value outside of the handcuffing. I think I think he is my second favorite late round running back to own, and I think he can end up having.
We know you're first.
Yeah, I mean
Herbert in the 9th.
Yeah, Herbert in the 9th. But I've seen him be going in like the 10th, 11th round. And that's a great value for him. Again, like I think he's going to have standalone value outside of just being a handcuff to Travis Etienne. I know all the hype is like Etienne can finish as the RB1. They're going to rush him for 1,800 yards. And it's like they're not going to do that. They didn't draft him to do that. Early in the season, they still had James Robinson when he was there while he was getting healthy. I think that they have a weapon in Tank Bigsby, and they saw it in the preseason how not just efficient he was. I mean, 5.7 yards per carry was great, but the 83 yards out of 159 came after contact. This guy's breaking tackles, all right? This is something, and he's just a big, strong physical back. It's a great thunder and lightning kind of situation for an offense that we expect to be a top 5 offense in the league.
Yeah.
And so this is not just a handcuff. Like, I can see him getting 40% of the workload in this backfield.
Yeah, I agree. This could be the situation like you saw with the New York Giants in both Ahmad Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs, where those guys were thunder and lightning to the point where some games it was 60-40 one way, 60-40 the other way. Sometimes it was 70-30 or 50-50. I think you're going to see that this season too. It's not going to be the Travis Etienne show, even though they want to get him 16. I think it was 1,600 was the actual Peterson quote. Yeah. But there's a pathway to that. But at the end of the day, look at what even if Tank Dell comes in, he takes the passing down roles.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's going to be, you have the ball in his hands in open space. He's going to make people miss.
Yeah. I think he has a lot of standalone value beyond just being a handcuff. I don't think it's just going to be a third down back roll.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be, series for series, but it could be, 2 series ETN and 1 series Bigsby. And, we still don't know what the 2-minute drill is going to look like and which of those running backs are going to be in there for the 2-minute drill.
Who's going to be the better pass protector between the two? That hasn't really surfaced yet.
Yeah. And so Bigsby is a guy that I think there was a lot of hype coming when he got drafted into the NFL and got drafted to the Jaguars. And I think he lived up to that hype in the preseason, and now we're going to see that kind of elevate into the regular season.
I agree.
Where he's going to have a lot more work into this offense than we truly anticipated, where we thought that ETN was just going to be, this bell cow running back. And let's not forget, ETN is really not built like a bell cow. He's not this short stock. He's not the stocky, thick dude that's going to get 300 carries in a year.
He is stronger than most of those smaller backs. But I agree. He's not built for that third down role. In fact, in college, he was built more for the third down role in being a receiver.
Right.
And we haven't seen that much in the NFL here in terms of check downs and passing plays because not only that, we just added Calvin Ridley to the Jaguars. So take a look at the opportunities for the running backs now in the passing game. I think that goes down even more. So when you look at the rushing and the running backs, like Tank Bigsby is built for a running back position. And I think it's going, Cream's going to rise to the top. This guy's going to get his. And like Chris said, he has standalone value. It's just like, to me, a situation, it's not quite the CMC Elijah Mitchell, but that Elijah Mitchell's in the same boat where the guy's going to have standalone value, but Bigsby's going to have more opportunities than someone like Mitchell. And the reason I say handcuff him with ETN, because if anything happens to ETN, this guy is a 3-down workhorse for the Jaguars. And you want that. He could be a league winner if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
he's still my second favorite tank.
Yeah, well, let's move on to your first favorite tank, and that's Tank Dell. I will
take baby.
I still, listen. The jury's still out on which wide receiver out there outside of Nico Collins is going to be the next best receiver there. I still think John Mechie's going to find his. He has just been off the field for a little bit longer. He'll work his way in, but right now Tank Dell's the one to own. Tank Dell in the preseason had 5 catches for 65 yards and a touchdown.
He only played one game.
One game. He played he made some acrobatic plays. He looked fast. He looked spry. And he's on the smaller side, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, you talk about people like Tyreek Hill, and you talk about someone like Devonta Smith, who's this skinny little guy. Tank Dell's a tiny little guy with fast twitch ability, and I think finding ways of getting him the ball in open space is exactly what they need to do to continue to move the ball down the field, and it helps the entire offense. So.
Well, I mean, you saw in preseason, we've talked about the Texans being one of the most improved teams this year. And the record might not show it, but I do think that offensively they have a lot more power onto that offense. I think Nico Collins shouldn't be going in the 13th round.
Tank Dell is going ahead of Nico Collins in some drafts because of everybody watched the preseason. Nico Collins is the guy to own receiver-wise there, period.
He is being used as a downfield receiver. He is a big body target. He's a long, lanky target. Tank Dell is going to take a lot of the underneath route. And I think that Mechie is going to evolve into that third receiver. He's going to play the number 2 on the outside over Woods, I think. But Tank Dell is going to be... I think Tank Dell, end of season, is going to see a higher snap share and a higher amount of routes run than Mechie will. And I think Tank Dell, as an underneath receiver, he can do a lot. And I think he is that guy, that Wes Welker, the Amendola, the Edelman, that is going to get open on third down. Well, and he doesn't need to be the down the field
Antonio
player.
Brown, but he can be downfield. Like he reminds me of the Antonio Brown, who he's always taking that slant over the middle is wide open. Like he'll find those pockets, he'll sit there or he'll catch it on the fly, and once he gets the ball in his hands, he can be gone.
Yeah.
It's it's what Waddle does for the Dolphins. You catch the ball and you fly. And he's got the ability to do that for Houston. I think it was a steal in a draft for him to get the guy like that. And it only complements the running game. And so this makes me even like someone like Dameon Pierce even a little bit more because of the sheer fact that more production out of the passing game is going to improve the running game. You're going to see, I think the stat was Dameon Pierce saw the most hits at the line or behind the line of scrimmage out of all starting running backs. Yeah. I don't think that's going to be the case this year, especially when you have now a mobile quarterback and weapons on the passing side. And to me, Tank Dell is like weapon X for Houston.
Yeah, I would agree. And then, we'll move on to our last winner, who I think unanimously everyone has seen in the offseason and is like, this guy won the preseason. And that's Jaylen Warren, right? Jaylen Warren had 6 rushes. He had 89 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. He is going to be heavily involved in this offense. I think the reason Najee Harris has slipped out of the first round and late into the second round is because of this guy here. He has been proving that 14.8 yards per carry. It's just Jaylen Warren has it, and we talked about Kenny Pickett already. We talked about the Steelers' offense already, and I think Jaylen Warren is another reason why we're so muddied up on this offense and who to own here is because they have 2 legitimate running backs. They have 4 legitimate pass catchers, and so who's going to get the bulk of the workload? And we saw Warren be effective on the goal line in the red zone, and we saw Najee Harris do that too. So this is a guy that I think he has his own standalone value. I think he's going to be most valuable if anything happened to Najee Harris.
Yeah.
Because we've seen other running backs, Benny Snell when he was a backup to Najee Harris and he got hurt. Benny Snell came in and was really effective for a couple games before Najee came back. This is a situation where if anything happened to Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren could be putting up top 10 RB numbers every week.
Well, yeah, look back at the Steelers when you had Le'Veon Bell and D'Angelo Williams. And Le'Veon Bell tears his ACL. Williams was a league winner for people.
Right.
So here's my question to people out there. And ask this to yourself. Would you rather sit there week after week having Najee as your starting running back watching Warren snipe touchdowns? Or would you rather have passed up on Najee Harris, had Warren on your team, and be able to flex him in a position where all of a sudden he's now sniping touchdowns and he's winning you weeks at the flex position? I know what my answer is, but here's the big thing about Najee. He is terrible in efficiency. He doesn't have home run ability. He doesn't have the long rushes that you see out of these RB1s that you want. Jaylen Warren's the guy with the efficiency and the home run ability in the running back position, and to be able to change a pace with Najee there, Najee's a great running back, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to fantasy, he's not. He's very inefficient. He's built on volume. He's built on volume, and I think that's going to hurt him in there. So if you're taking him in the second round and third round, there's people I'd rather take Aaron Jones in a shared backfield situation. I'd rather take Joe Mixon before him. I'd rather take a chance on J.K. Dobbins in Baltimore before him, because to me those guys just do more with the football when it gets in their hands than Najee does. And I foresee the volume going down because Warren is earned himself plenty of reps on this season, and unless he can't convert his preseason into the regular season, there's no way he's not going to get pieces here and there. They're not going to set up packages for him, and the ability to come in when Najee gets tired or late in games or two-minute drills. He's the perfect running back to be there, and so to me, Warren, obviously we all agree, and unanimously a lot of people do, he's their preseason winner, so to speak. But all these guys hold weight that we just talked about here. Yeah. And I think you can feel comfortable grabbing these in the draft or keeping an eye on them in the first couple weeks and jumping on the waiver wire option where your league mates are not really paying attention to that portion of it. We have a couple of quick honorable mentions we'll talk about here that didn't make our full list, but definitely played their hearts out on the field this preseason, earned themselves a shout-out. One is Tajay Spears. The guy who had 22 carries for 117 yards, a 5.3 average, and a touchdown. The reason he doesn't make the huge winner list is because he is behind Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry is going to get the volume there. He is the king. Tajay is going to be a great change of pace and help out that team, but they're going to lean on Henry as always. However, if you've got plenty of bench spots in your league, like I'm talking 7 to 10 bench spots, Tajay is somebody you want to go sneaky pick. Dynasty leagues, grab Tajay Spears because he is going to be a great running back for Tennessee Titans in the future. And if anything happens to Henry, you've got yourself a formidable running back.
Yeah, and I think that even with Julius Chestnut coming in, and he had a fantastic preseason, I think for both Tajay Spears and for Chestnut, the winner here is the offensive line of the Tennessee Titans,
which were supposed to be worst or second worst offensive line in the league.
And everyone is saying that the reason they're fading Derrick Henry is because of this offensive line and because Derrick Henry's getting older. Look at what these two did against good defenses, starting defenses, and they were thrashing them for big chunk plays. You had Derrick Henry there, and if I'm a Derrick Henry owner, I'm 100% drafting Tajay Spears in the 13th round. Because he's going to go around there, and I don't think people are going to reach on Tajay Spears just to get a handcuff. This is a guy, again, unlike the other running backs that we talked about, I don't think Tajay Spears has standalone value. I think he is going to be reliant on a Derrick Henry injury.
Exactly. He's a true handcuff.
He's a true handcuff. And if I'm a Derrick Henry owner, I'm 100% drafting Tajay Spears because he can come in and immediately take over RB, that RB1 caliber level play.
Yeah, you don't skip a beat. And that's the thing. If people are worried about Derrick Henry and drafting him because of injury, you're pretty confident that Tajay is not going to get drafted or is going to be, not drafted until like the last round of most drafts. People aren't going to grab him because they know Derrick Henry's in front of them, yet people are afraid to draft Henry because of injury. And then our last honorable mention here is Aiden O'Connell. He's the backup for the Las Vegas Raiders. Quarterback had 62 attempts, had 43 completions for 482 yards and 3 touchdowns. A pretty darn good showing for the preseason. We think that if anything happens to Jimmy Garoppolo, if he truly isn't fully healthy, or if he just falls on his face flat and just doesn't get it done, they have a legitimate backup that can get things done and get the ball, obviously, to Davante Adams, which is huge, too.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders' offense as a whole, I thought played really well in the preseason. Now that Josh Jacobs is back, there was a lot of hesitation for a lot of people and Davante Adams has slipped in a lot of drafts. I mean, people who have drafted already, you guys
have him in our top 5, by the way, as a receiver. So
he's still in the top 5 as a receiver, but he's being drafted in the mid to late second round.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. If he's there, smash that button and grab him on your team. I'm not concerned that Jimmy Garoppolo is the starter there. He is going to be playing in this offense. He's a good quarterback. He can throw the ball downfield. And he can throw the ball open to Davante Adams. But if anything did happen to Jimmy Garoppolo, which he does have an injury past, right? Mm-hmm. He came into the season having to pass a physical. And Aiden O'Connell is a legit backup. He's a legit thrower. He played really, really well in preseason. I had to put him as part of this list. I didn't have to really fight Jono, but I fought Jono to get him involved in this list.
I gave him honorable mention.
Honorable mention. We decided that was good enough for him. But Aiden O'Connell, to me, he was the winner of preseason. He made the roster and made the roster as the backup there.
Yeah.
I think this is, there are a couple other honorable mentions that we didn't talk about. People, you guys can talk about DTR, even Baker Mayfield winning the starting job. But Aiden O'Connell, we definitely wanted to give a shout out to because he played really well in preseason and just definitely showed us that this offense is going to be much better than we anticipated.
And one of the things too about this offense, the last note on the Raiders, I know it's not a Raiders segment here, but people are always saying that Jimmy Garoppolo is a short pass guy, a dink and dunk guy. He can't get the ball downfield to Davante Adams, blah, blah. He ran a offense in San Fran in a West Coast style offense. He didn't have the type of offense that does push the ball truly downfield. In fact, when he did, he was still successful when you look at what he did with Brandon Ayuk. But to me, you can't, it's not apples to apples here. It's apples to oranges. I mean, look, Jarrett Stidham came in last year in a game for the Raiders. And what did he throw, 4 touchdowns, I think, or something like that?
He played really well.
And who was the biggest benefactor of that?
Davante
Adams.
Right.
So, to me, it doesn't matter. Everybody's scared of Davante Adams. It doesn't matter who's throwing the ball to him. In fact, Jimmy Garoppolo is a winning quarterback. He's an efficient quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He will get the job done. You won't be mad in terms of taking Davante Adams either.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is one of the better play action quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah.
And he now has Josh Jacobs back.
Yeah.
Who is in case you guys don't know, he led the league in rushing last year, and he could possibly do that again this year. So, in case you didn't know, so he's going to have the play action ability for him, and that's going to just open things downfield for Davante Adams.
Yeah, if you're looking for any Aiden O'Connell advice, should I draft him? We're not saying draft him. This guy's not a drafting quarterback here. If anything happens to Jimmy Garoppolo, he may not even be a big waiver pickup depending upon what your team build is. But I will say he is a quarterback that has an opportunity that if you get some bad injuries at your quarterback position and it is bone dry on the waivers, and all of a sudden there's an injury to Jimmy G, especially 2 quarterback leagues, this is a guy that you want to go grab because he's going to be able to get the job done. I mean, we just read you the numbers from preseason, so He's got the weapons around him to do it. Yep. That's all for our episode on the winners of preseason. We didn't want to go over the losers of preseason because to me it's really hard to nitpick people and call them losers of preseason. I mean, you could talk about Kyle Trask and people that lost a competition in terms of starting roles. Jonathan Taylor because of his contract signing. But those are always obvious things. In terms of people that prove themselves that they're going to get the ball.
Anthony Richardson.
I don't think
just
the
whole Colts.
Yeah, the Colts.
Everyone in the
Colts. But
sorry, Pat McAfee.
Yeah. So this is our winners list here. Feel free in the comments to leave who you think if we left somebody out from your winners list because we'd like to hear it. And we'd be happy to go back and forth with you through the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button because we are within 1 week of game 1 of the NFL season. And if you are drafting, please go back and look at our mock drafts. Go back and look at our rankings episodes. Go back and look at our earlier episodes when we break down the offenses because there's some morsels of information that you're going to want to digest that'll help you beat your league in your draft this season.
And we'll be right on our phones. So if you guys have any draft questions that you're drafting either Sunday the 3rd or even on Labor Day, go and send us a message. We'll get back to you pretty quickly as to if you have 2 players that you're a toss up between. Shout the questions out.
We'll be your coin flip.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
I'll be your Doug. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Check you next time.